this episode, we are back talking about past lives. So this is the third episode in our Past Lives series. Here, both Jamie and I are going to tell you about a really amazing story of people who, as kids, had vivid, sort of life-consuming recollections of past lives. So interesting that they had so much information that they found the people they claimed to be before and actually reconnected with some of those people in their lives. So Jamie will be telling you the story of Shanti Devi, and I will be telling you the story of James Lienager. So stay tuned. These are such cool stories. This is Heather Wood and Jamie Hayhurst, and this is the Intuitive Girls Guide. Hey guys, welcome back for episode 3 about past lives. Hey Jamie.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. I'm excited. We have 2 really cool stories about other people's past lives and their experiences, both kids. And so we're going to tell you about those and tell each other about those. I'm psyched. Are you ready?
Yeah, it's so cool.
Okay, so we're going to tell you the stories of James Lienager and Shanti Devi. And I'm going to put in the show notes, if you go to embodylove.me/intuitivegirls, I'll put some of this info up in the show notes too, so you can go back and see some of the cool things. So you can check that out too. All right. So Jay, can I tell you about James Lienager first?
Yeah, let's hear it.
Okay. So James Lienager was a little boy. He's from the United States. When he was 2 years old, he started having these really intense nightmares.
Mm-hmm.
And his mom would go in because he would be yelling and kicking his feet up at the ceiling, saying, "Plane crash, plane's on fire, little man can't get out."
Oh, no.
I know.
Yikes.
It went on for months. His mom said that like 3 or 4 nights a week, he would have these really intense nightmares. Which I think is a bit unusual for 2. A little bit older,
Yeah.
I can see big nightmares like this, but
right.
At the same time, James had this incredible love, obsession, and huge amount of knowledge about airplanes. He was obsessed. And he really didn't have a reference for it. He would constantly be talking about airplanes. And in one of the interviews I watched, his mom was like, it's not like we were watching war documentaries. He watched like Teletubbies and Barney, and that's it. So like, I don't know where he was getting this info from. Okay?
Wow.
So there's really no reference for it in his life, other than where he mentioned it in his nightmares and like the toys he had and his obsession with playing that he was a pilot.
Okay.
So James's mom is talking to her mom about this, trying to figure out what to do for James and like what's going on with him. And she says she has got to be one of us. She's got to be a fellow empath, this mom, this grandma. Right. She says, "I wonder if it's a past life."
There you go. And the door was opened.
Yeah, exactly. Now, here's the thing though. This is a family of evangelical Christians.
Oh.
So the idea of past lives, not fitting well, not a good idea for them. They don't like this idea. They're very uncomfortable with it. In fact, the dad, his direct quote is that it sounded like a whole lot of baloney.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very supportive. Very
exactly. Exactly. Now, dad comes around eventually, but at this point, he's not into it. But it's becoming so intense for James that they end up reaching out to a woman, a psychiatrist. She's pretty well known. Her name is Carol Bowman. So I'll put her in the show notes too. But she has a few books about past lives and specifically about helping kids manage remembering past lives. She's a cool chick in herself. Okay. So they call her in to help.
Nice.
And so what she kind of trains them to do is, especially at bedtime, when James is starting to get kind of drowsy, to ask him questions about his past life or his nightmares or what he knows.
Okay.
Solid advice, I think, because that drowsy state where you're sort of, you're less worried about what it sounds like.
Right, exactly. It's more natural.
Yes. Now, I'm going to tell you some of the stuff he says.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to just remind you again that he's in between 2 and 3 years old while he's saying all these things.
Okay.
He's not like 8 and coming up with this stuff.
Right.
2, 3, right? Okay. So he says, and in the way that they ask the questions, I think is important too, because as he brings it up, they just like further inquire about it. Like that was very much Carol Bowman's advice. So if he starts talking about the plane crash, they'd say like, "Oh, why did your plane crash?" You know what I mean? It wasn't a separate like interrogation.
Yeah,
Yes.
they weren't leading him through info.
Exactly. So little James says that his plane crashed because it was shot by the Japanese. I'll just give you the list of things he says. He says he flew off a ship called the Natoma.
What?
He was shot in Iwo Jima. He says he is the third James. He refers to himself as the third James, and even signs the like little pictures that he draws James 3.
Wow.
I know. And he talks a lot about a friend that he had who was a fellow pilot, he said, named Jack Larson.
Okay, that's a lot of information.
There is. And there's even more, but these were the ones that I picked out that I thought were really awesome. So the dad actually decides to do a little research,
Mm-hmm.
and he confirms every single thing on James's list of things he's telling them. So there was a boat, a ship called the Natoma Bay that was working in World War II in Japan,
Mm-hmm.
working in Iwo Jima, and there was a pilot on that mission. Only one pilot died on that mission, and guess what his name was?
Larson.
Nope.
What?
James Houston Jr.
No.
So he's the third
Third.
James. Now, they did confirm his best friend.
Oh God. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, I know. Let me go back because there's two big pieces of information. So his friend Jack Larson, they did find another pilot who flew with James Houston Jr. named Jack Larson. There is a picture, I'll put it up in the show notes, of James Lienager, this little kid, with this Jack Houston. They found the guy and they took a picture together.
Oh my.
Like, I know. But the pilot who died, James Houston Jr., so that James Houston Jr. would have been the second James, right?
Right.
So this is the third James, James
Wow.
3. Isn't that crazy?
Yes.
So they also showed him pictures of sort of the crew, like pictures that James Houston Jr. was in, and he pointed out and recognized shipmates by name.
That's so cool. But like crazy, but cool and wild. It's wow.
Exactly. So here's a couple of other little observations that are basically my opinion on this. Okay. When you watch these parents interviewed, and there were a lot of interviews, like they did like the morning news circuit, some talk show circuits. They were out there. And they also wrote a book about James's experience called Soul Survivor. They were promoting that too. I haven't read it, but I would be interested in looking at it for sure. When you're watching these parents, I get a little bit of my heckles, like they go up a little bit. I'm like, I feel protective of James. Like they're like exploiting him a little bit, in my opinion. They're a little too showy, or this probably sounds really bad, but when you see parents who are like really riding the train of something with their kids,
right?
It made me a little uncomfortable.
Dance mom or something.
Yes. Now, I totally believe James Lienager was James Houston Jr. and he remembers that. I 100% believe him. But there definitely is this quality to the way the parents talk about it that, I don't know, seems just like a little much to me. Does that make sense?
And why does he want to be on a TV show about it?
Right.
Right? Like as a
Yeah.
child, he's just looking, he feels the pull of this past life and he's looking to connect to it somehow, but it's not like he was looking to write a book about it or have it written about him or be on some talk show circuit or something. I mean, that's not about him. That's about the parents.
Totally, 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 totally. So there is that sort of element. There's this element when you're watching the parents where they're something about the way that they're speaking is very rehearsed. Obviously, for them to come from an evangelical background, that's like a very strict religion. To going on talk shows and talking about your kid's past life, like that's going to be a lot. So like total credit to them for being open enough and like loving their kid enough to like explore this and not let their current belief system sort of restrict that.
Yeah, that's a big leap right there.
Yeah. All right, so there's a couple more things. So they bring James when he's a little bit older. I couldn't figure out exactly how old he was in the video of this, but I'm gonna guess he's like 7 in this video. They take him to. They find the place that James Houston Jr.'s plane went down in Japan, and
Hmm.
they take him there. And they hold a memorial service for James Houston Jr. and it's filmed, and it was like on TV.
Okay.
It is weird, Jay.
Wow.
It is weird to watch. He puts like this wreath in the water and he's sobbing, and I could tell that there must have been some direction for him. Like I'm gonna guess, and I couldn't confirm this, but I'm gonna guess maybe Carol Bowman gave him some things to say. Like he was saying
Right.
stuff like, "I'm letting you go now." Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Right. Like therapeutic
yeah.
things.
So the
Yep.
fact that they did this, I am supportive of. The fact that it was like filmed and put on TV everywhere was
Mm.
a little weird. It was a little,
Yeah, that's a little unnecessary. It feels a little gratuitous.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
weird. So you can find the video on YouTube. Again, it made the news circuit. So you know, think what you will. That
Right.
made me slightly uncomfortable. But just a quick update. James Lienager is now 22. And I'm actually, while I'm thinking of this too, I'm going to put on in the show notes a picture of James Lienager next to James Houston Jr. Now that he's a little bit older, you can see they do really look a lot alike.
Wow. Yeah, I
Yeah.
want to see that.
Interesting. Um, but James Leininger he joined the Navy.
Wow.
I know. Isn't that interesting?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty cool.
It is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my story about little James, who's not so little anymore. He's 22 now, but there's plenty of videos and information that you guys can check out, and we would love for you to let us know, give us some feedback about what you think of James's story for sure.
Right. Absolutely.
All right. So will you tell me about Shanti Devi now?
Yeah. So this goes back further. This Shanti Devi was born in 1926 in Delhi, India. Um, And at the age of 4, like we discussed in episode 1, you were saying that this happens like with children that are much younger, saying things that um, a child of that age wouldn't normally say. So she kept saying at 4 years old, she wanted to go to her real home. I want to go to
Hmm.
my real home and I want to go find my husband.
Yeah, 4-year-olds don't say that.
No, right, like real home, like implying that this was fake. Like that's sort of the red flag that it's not just a child talking fantastically or nonsensically. And then she named her home, which was a city called Mathura, that was 90 miles away from where she was currently living in Delhi. Um, and she
Wow, that's interesting. I feel like that's not that far.
No, it doesn't feel that far. I mean, probably far like as the parent who's hearing the story. But when
Right.
you think about it, when you look back on it, you're like, oh, if you were going to reincarnate, that this sounds very close.
Right, exactly.
She also started speaking and using the dialect of that city, which was different from the dialect that people spoke in Delhi. So it'd be like maybe my like me starting to speak in a southern accent as opposed to like a Boston accent, right?
Yeah,
Like it just started speaking differently.
that's a
Um,
lot for a 4-year-old.
Right. And so this went on for a couple years. And then when she was 6 years old, I think Shanti had had enough and she decided to run away. She decided to go. She was determined. She wanted to go to Mathura, and find her husband.
And
Um,
that's a long time. Like that's 2 years of obsession with this. Like most of
right.
the time, if little kids have an obsession, they're not going to hold on to it for 2 years.
Exactly. And so she said that she was going to find her husband, and she said that she was married and that she had died 10 days after childbirth. And she was going to find her husband. Um, she named him at 6 years old. She named the husband. And
What?
and remember that this is, and so my cynical brain, as I'm as I'm like researching this, I'm like, well, maybe she found it or something. But this is 1934.
Yeah.
So this is pre-internets,
Yeah.
pre-YouTube, pre-Wikipedia, all this stuff.
She couldn't stalk him on Facebook.
Correct. So she's naming a husband by name, a child, and a city with its dialect. And then
That's so many
she
things.
decides to go there.
Oh my God. Oh.
So I'm not exactly sure why, but her headmaster at her school got involved and decided to help and figure out what was going on. I think the runaway was caused him to get involved. And so he started to look into it, and he found this man by this name in the city and confirmed that his wife had died 9 years earlier
Oh my God.
after childbirth.
Oh,
So it was like,
that that it's too many things. It's not like two of those things were right. Like all of them were right.
they were all right. And so there were, of course, people that disputed it. But the part that I found was interesting was that Mahatma Gandhi, who's this big spiritual leader, this big political leader in India at the time, he got involved and looked into the case, and he supported her claim.
Wow. I mean, you got Gandhi's back.
Gandhi on your side, right? Pretty
What more
legit.
do you need?
Right, when Gandhi believes you. Um, and and like with your story, she did have these times where she got older. She had these not like claims to fame, but she did have these sort of runs in her lifetime, at two different times throughout her life. She died in 1987. So there was one point where the story got some notoriety and it was publicized and it was talked about for a while. And then again in the early 80s, it caught wind again. People caught wind of the story, and it was on the news and in newspapers and stuff. And then she passed away in 1987.
Okay. Wow.
So who knows where she is now?
Is she back yet?
I don't know. Maybe she is.
I wonder if there's anyone out there claiming to be Shanti Devi. I wonder, like, where it's publicized, you know?
Right. And I think when we talked in episode 1 is that like these stories tend to happen when there's a trauma like this, like they come back really soon. They come back to sort of finish up what had happened in the life before, which our two stories both speak to those points. I don't think that you have a soul that is always so cognizant and aware at every single lifetime. I think that's too draining, and I think it's too much information to be doing that in every single lifetime, to be so aware.
I agree. I think there's got to be that tie. And I know we talked about this in the first episode of like dying kind of traumatically and unnaturally and maybe feeling like you didn't finish like whatever your work was or your mission and you sort of jump back quick. I think that's got to have, some tie to both of these stories and a lot of them that we see.
Right. I mean, Shanti left her husband and her 10-year-old baby. I mean, 10-day-old baby.
Right.
I mean, I can understand that you would feel like that was unfinished. That wasn't how she wanted it to end.
Right. Let me get back and check on these people, make sure they're keeping their act together. Yeah. Yeah. It's just so fascinating. To me, I don't tend to not believe people with their story. I tend to, my cynical part goes to like, how much of this is true and how much do you have to like fabricate maybe to prove it to people? Like, because we're so caught up in like proving everything, right? And
yep.
I know I mentioned this before too, but like coming from a background like you and I have, when our kids tell us about past lives, it's really not like called a newsworthy, and it's
Right.
also not disrupting our belief system. So we aren't going to like probably publicize that and put that out there as much as maybe these stories with such specific detail, maybe not really being believed by your parents at first brings that in, more.
Right,
There could
exactly.
be that too.
Right. And I think, Heather, we should add to your, like, the pictures from your story. There are pictures that were taken of Shanti with her husband that
Oh,
the headmaster introduced them together. So there's a photo of her, this little girl sitting with this grown man that,
that seems like such awkward sauce. I can't even. I'll put that on I'll put that on our show notes too. Oh my gosh. I mean, the picture of James Lienager with Jack Larson is awkward, but I mean, that's a whole other level of awkward where, I mean, imagine the guy in the picture being like, oh, this is a picture of me with my ex-wife. I don't know if he said
former wife.
ex-wife.
Right,
Yeah, former wife.
right.
She's now a child. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, I think it's tough for that guy. It's tough.
It's a tough thing. Yeah. It's a tough thing to explain. I love it. I love stories like this. I could listen to and dive into them all day long. I think they're super fun, but I think these two stories were both incredibly cool.
I agree. I think they cover like the spans of time and different sort of like cultural, like different parts of the world. I think they were really cool.
Yes, absolutely. So I'll put information about them in the show notes about both James and Shanti. And again, that is embodylove.me/intuitive girls. And there's also a place for you to give us feedback. So we'd love to know what you think of these stories. And if you come up with any questions or maybe you know something about them that you could add in, we would love to hear
Yeah,
from you. So please do
definitely.
that too. All right, awesome. So next time when we come back, we're going to talk about a conspiracy. I have a conspiracy theory about someone who I believe is somebody who came back, like a past life conspiracy. I'm going to tell you about, Jay. I
Uh-oh.
know.
Wait to hear it.
Stay tuned. All right, we'll talk to you later. Bye, Jay.
Bye. See you later.